Alright, we're going to do a tomato review on this tomato right here. And this tomato is just a wild tomato from Italy. And somebody had sent me seeds to this, and they were basically telling me that this tomato kind of grows wild throughout different parts of Italy. I'm not 100% sure as to exactly what section of Italy they were gathering these tomatoes. But they said that you'll find these plants growing randomly throughout different areas of Italy, and they just kind of pop up and grow all around different areas. And so I received seeds from it, and I grew it out just to see what it would be like. And I'm pretty impressed with this variety of tomato because it literally produces so many tomatoes out of this thing. It's unbelievable. I would almost put this in comparison to a pimp tomato, which is like an Everglade tomato or a currant sized tomato. Currant tomatoes are pimps. I would put this tomato on par with that because the amount of tomatoes that this thing produces is incredible. I mean, it's just an absolute ton of tomatoes coming off of this thing. And there's literally so many tomatoes coming off this thing, they're actually falling on the ground. Now, the one thing I did notice that I'm not too pleased with is the fact that they seem like they split very easily during the rain. So when you get rain, a lot of them are going to split. And I'm not too pleased with that, but I mean, for the type of tomato that this is, it's definitely worth growing. So I'm kind of glad I actually got seeds to this variety of tomato. So is it a pimp or is it a Solanum lycopersicum? I'm really not sure. It's probably a little bit of both. It may have crossed over. And so it's probably just a lycopersicum. So let me give you a view of some of these tomatoes and kind of give you an idea what they look like. Now, they are cherry tomatoes, but they're a very small cherry tomato. So as you can see here, they're quite small. And they're not perfectly round. They're a little bit oblong shaped, or maybe even you want to say egg shaped. They're a little bit egg shaped. They go from an orange to a deep orange. They don't exactly turn red, or maybe they do. It's hard to tell. To me, it looks like a very deep orange, a dark orange. And they don't really get any bigger than what you see here. This is as big as they get. A lot of times they're a little bit smaller, but generally this is the size of the tomato. And I'll give you a look at the inside. And that's what it looks like on the inside. You can see it's a very nice uniform seed package on the inside. Kind of unusual looking, to be honest with you. I mean, the seeds are very uniform, the way they're attached. And the skin almost looks, perfect. The flesh on it looks almost perfectly uniform like a commercial tomato. But I don't think that it is. This is probably just a tomato that escaped cultivation maybe many years ago. And eventually it probably hybridized with other tomatoes, and then eventually it turned into this. I would imagine. I mean, I don't really know much about it, other than I received seeds to grow it out and review it. So that is that. That is your wild tomato from Italy. So let's do a bricks on this and see what it tastes like. Or let's see what the bricks is. I always do the bricks first because that sets the stage. Well, it's pretty high. It's about 7, maybe 7.25 on the brick. So it's got a pretty good amount of sugar content in this. It's actually one of the higher tomatoes this year for me, because a lot of tomatoes have been coming in around the 5 and 6 range. Not even the cherry tomatoes were coming in at that range. Very, very nice. Wow, guys, this is a real nice snacking tomato right here. Man, these things are loaded with flavor, I'm telling you. Wow, that leaves a really good taste in your mouth. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's go over the numbers here. And so, let's start with the sweetness. The sweetness, I'm going to put that up there. I'm going to put that at like a 35 on the sweetness. It was pretty pronounced. There was quite a bit of sugar on that. And you can really taste that in tomato. It's very, very nice. A very nice effect for this tomato. So I'm going to say about 34, 35. We'll go somewhere around there. That should be a good number for that, where I think it should be. The tanginess was also somewhere around 30. It was a little bit, maybe a little lower than that. Probably like 33 on the tangy. They were almost perfectly balanced. A very nice combination between the sweet and the tangy. Now, the moisture was very moist. It's a very, very moist, wet type of tomato. It's not a dry tomato in any way. I would say from a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, this was probably a 7 on the moisture. It was very wet, moist, a very good delivery system for the flavor. If the tomato is dry, you're not going to get, even though it might taste good, you're not going to have that delivery system to deliver that flavor to the back of your tongue if it's dry. It could be a great tasting tomato, but without that moisture, it just, you're not going to get that effect. So you need that moisture in there. This tomato definitely has it, has a 7 on that moisture. And bring that juice right to the back of your tongue. It really, really hits those taste buds very strong. It really brought it right to it. So the moisture is about a 7. Tomato flavor was absolutely unbelievable. From a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to put that the prominence of the flavor, not like how it tasted, but the prominence, how strong was that tomato flavor in that tomato. From a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, this was probably an 8. This was very high with a tomato flavor. And if you eat it with the seeds, you're really going to taste that tomato flavor because it's mostly in the seeds. But I ate it with and without the seeds. The flesh on the tomato also carries that tomato flavor. It's just not as prominent. The seeds really does have a little bit more of that tangy and the soury flavor in it. It's really got that part of it in the seeds, but the tomato rind itself actually had it. So even if you remove the seeds, you're still going to get a great tomato flavor out of it. But I ate it both ways. It was delicious either way. I'm definitely going to give that one an 8 from a scale of 1 to 10 on the tomato flavor, with 10 being the highest. And 8 is pretty high. That's a pretty good number for a tomato to have a rich and dominant and strong tomato flavor. Very good numbers on this tomato all the way around so far. And as far as the undertones of the tomato, sometimes, now I've been eating these before, some of the tomatoes are carrying some of the undertones, and some of the tomatoes, like some of the ones we just did that right now, didn't have any undertones. But I have had some tomatoes have undertones to it, and it's slightly earthy undertone to it. You know, earthy meaning, you know, just some kind of a wild taste to it, really. And it's not really bad, but not all tomatoes have that earthy tone. It could be maybe a bug bite might cost, you know, that you get those, you know, there's bugs that bite, like those stink bugs, they bite into the tomato and suck the juice out. That might throw the flavor off. It's hard to say if that's what happened, but I'm just saying little things could sometimes cause the tomato to get an undertone too. It could be a defensive mechanism as well. But as far as the undertones to it, again, you know, these two didn't have the undertones, but I've had these tomatoes before where they did have some undertones to it. And if I was to give a number, I would just throw a 1 on it for now, with 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, and 5 in the middle. If you hit a 5 or more or over 5 in general, that's already dominating over the tomato flavor itself. That undertone, you don't want to be more dominant than the tomato flavor. And if it is, it's just a really awkward tasting tomato. But I would just give it a 1 because there's something in there. You know, maybe you could even go 0.5. There is something on some of these tomatoes. So it's not on every tomato, but some of the tomatoes are going to have it. So it's really a wonderful tomato, guys. I really like this tomato. It's an absolutely heavy producer. I'm talking, you're going to get literally hundreds of tomatoes that are, I mean, there's so many of them, they're falling on the ground. And the birds are coming in, the insects are coming in, the fruit flies are coming in. It's really making a mess, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a small cherry tomato. I'll give you a comparison of a cherry tomato. Okay, so this would be like a regular sized cherry tomato, and this is the size of this tomato in comparison. Okay, so you can see right here, that's like a regular sized cherry tomato you'd get in a store, that kind of size. And then of course, you know, you have this size tomato right here. This is the one that we got. So it's a cherry tomato, but it's very small. Okay, just so you understand that it's not a large type of cherry tomato. So, I mean, that's it. You know, I mean, that's my tomato review for the wild tomato from Italy. Wild from Italy, I put. That's all I know about it. There's really nothing else. Again, these tomatoes supposedly grow wild in and around different parts of Italy. Maybe the central part of Italy, coming towards the lower parts of Italy. They just kind of grow wild throughout the landscapes out there. So I don't have any more information than that about it. That's all I know about it. But it's definitely worth a tomato, it's definitely a tomato worth checking out. So I will definitely have seeds for this at the end of the year. And I will leave a link in the description below where you can, click the link and go to the website to buy seeds. And you'll also read all the information that I put down for that wild variety of tomato. I'll see if I can find anything online about it. And I'll put everything in the description. And that's it. That's your tomato review for the wild tomato from Italy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Something else I wanted to point out too with this tomato that I didn't show you earlier. I'm gonna cut this little section into the video. But I want to show you the very bottom of the tomato. If I could, I don't know if I can with this camera. If you can see right here, this is the bottom of the tomato. You can see it has a little navel instead of a point or being flat. All these tomatoes have a little pinhole on the bottom of it, which is very unique for a tomato. I mean, you don't often see that little navel on the bottom. It's usually a nipple sticking out of a tomato, not a little pinhole like that. So I'll try to zoom you in the best I could. And you can see there's like a little navel on it. Every single tomato that comes off of this plant has the same feature. So it's very unique to this tomato. It's definitely not the same thing as a regular pimpinellifolium. I've never seen really a navel on a little cherry tomato like this. So just wanted to point that out.